I went home one day and told my wife, we're moving to Caracas, Venezuela. She said, what are you smoking? I mean, we're living there. Our life is sort of, Carlos is in school, the whole thing. And we did. She went along with it.
Wow.
So that Carlos, we moved to Venezuela and set up a network of brokers throughout Latin America. So Venezuela was kind of the central point at the time. But Ecuador, Colombia, Argentina, they were strong markets for us. And because of my success over there, in less than 2 years, they made me the offer to take over the whole sales and marketing for the company and move back to the States. And, we kept that operation going. And, one of the things I never forget, they were about to fire me because I had been down there for like 4 months, spent a lot of money, and no results. I had never met Charlie Cheezem. So one day, Ken Brown, who was the Vice-President of Sales, calls me, and he says, Eddie, Charlie wants to see you. I had never met this man. I had no idea who Charlie was. And he says, okay, well, I can go next week. He says, no, he wants to see you. Like, what's the next flight? So I come. Wonderful man. I mean, he became my mentor, and it's a long career after that. But he said, I don't know what's going on. We like you, but this thing is not working. We can't afford to keep spending this kind of money. We're not getting any results. So I made a deal with them. He says, look, give me until Easter week, which was about a month away. If we don't have success, we shut down the operations and, we come back. He agreed. We sold 103 units.
Wow.
On Easter weekend.
Wow.
Because all these people wanted to see it. I mean,
Right.
I'm talking to them down there. They like it. When I go there for Easter week, I'll look at it. And that that kind of put me on, in a sort of a pedestal with them. And it took off from there. Eventually, I was involved in more and more of the business. We got involved more in the acquisition, when they were looking at properties and getting involved with their own architects. And they had people in there. I learned so much more that I could have learned in college, university, get a master and anything.
Of course.
For whatever reason, he kind of took me under his arm, and I was kind of a psychic.
Wow.
and really taught me the business. A few years later, I was made a vice president of the company. Then I became a member of the board of directors and kept, on the way up. Sadly, for me, I guess, because the future was bright, he had 53% of the public company. And he had gone through a divorce. And at one point, somebody came in and made him an offer that was one of those you can't refuse, and he decided to sell the company. So I don't know if it was bad or good, but, the company was gone. I was offered to stay, and I agreed to stay short-term to see whether I liked it or not, stayed 90 days and left and started my own company.
Wow. And what year was it when you moved to Venezuela?
1976.
1976. Eddie Avila, everybody, joins us today, along with Bob Hall. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we're rolling. We're going to go ahead and start. That was a perfect introduction to your career and how you got started, Eddie.
It's a lot of history. I feel great about the opportunities I've had. I mean, for somebody to walk in as a salesperson and end up being on the board of directors of the company, that
And
really,
continuing on till now and being a developer yourself.
And once I left the company, went on my own, I created two companies, one to do developments and one to do sales and marketing. On the sales and marketing side, we aimed it at selling for developers. That was really the stronghold. And over the years, we have sold billions of dollars in real estate for developers, as well as, obviously, all our own product. And, it's over 11,000 units.
Wow.
In condominium sales. And so we've been blessed.
All in South America, Florida area?
We sold property mostly in Florida, but we did some projects in Arizona and Southern California.
Fantastic. And also, Bob Hall is here. Bob, you are an architect, originally from Tampa. You said born
Correct.
and raised. What is your origin story, sir? How'd you get started?
Wow, that's a good question. Starting as a kid in Seminole Heights and moving out to Brandon made me kind of a kid of the suburbs, right? So, which is kind of a good tale because it got me involved in forts and orange groves and doing
Right.
things out in the wild. So, that with a father who was in construction and a mother who was a teacher and somewhat of an artist, it sort of got me technically and artistically aligned a little bit.
Right.
And ultimately led to an architectural career. Have no idea why, but it did, right? And kind of early on. So I got at it pretty good at an early age and, traveled a little bit, out of the office to help on some construction projects. Went to Naples for a couple of years to build our first high-rise. So I was a fresh kid out of college who volunteered for that job, got to see a lot about how these things really go together. So, that's sort of a fast forward of about 10 years there of going to school and getting out and
Right.
being a part of the big boy world, right, of building high-rise buildings. And then we started to design several of them, and that was pretty interesting.
What
And
firm were you with at the time?
the same firm I am today. It's interesting. I went to work for a man named Jerry Kurtz, who was the founder of Kurtz Gaines Hall Jones. We have now, 50 years later, have merged with another Tampa firm that was Rojo Architecture, and then CGHJ Architecture, has made Grow Architecture. So that's sort of an announcement here today. We've been at it about a year and a half to blend those two companies. But now have 26 people in our office, an office in Delhi, India, an office in Rome, Italy, some outsourcing in Virginia and in Sarasota.
Wow.
And that sort of broadens our reach, allows us to do high-rise work, mid-rise, low-rise, luxury, single-family, medical office, historic preservation. Done a lot of work in the Tampa area over those years.
You do it all.
We do it all. We do a lot, and we do interiors as well. So, not doing interiors on the AQUA Project, but we do interiors as well.
And we were talking to you before the show about the AQUA Project. It's the Westshore Yacht Club. It's 3 condominium towers. Tyler, could you pull that up? Let's dig into that. It's an exciting project. We were talking before we went live about just the availability of waterfront real estate and the positioning of that project directly between the 2 urban cores of St. Petersburg and Tampa. So here's a rendering of it, the 3 towers on the top picture there. Now, Bob, it sounds like you are maybe the more creative vision of the aesthetics of the project, and Eddie, you are the developer.
Well,
In general.
in general, but often an architect takes the cues from their client. A smart one does, right? And Eddie and Jorge, his partner, had a vision for this project, and we try to craft what we do by what our client needs, what our client wants, right? Rather than sort of push an aesthetic on them. Luckily for us, they are already married to a modern aesthetic, right? And it fit right in with doing a yacht club. So, the word yacht, the feel of yachts kind of entered into the picture of the design of the building.
And Eddie, is this your first tower high-rise project in the city of Tampa that you've done?
In the city, it is.
In the city.
As I said, Cheezem Development did most of the buildings in Sankey. One that you may be familiar with it is Crescent Beach Club, which is the 2 towers that are curved. That took, a lot of convincing to do that kind of shape because it costs more. But I think today is one of the nicest buildings still in
Totally.
Sankey.
Yeah, Sand Key has most of the larger condominiums on the beach in in Pinellas County, really. I mean, Clearwater has a few, and then down south. But Sand Key really has. Sand Key's, I guess, like our Sunny Isles. I mean, if you could even compare the two. And a lot of those were built in the 70s, correct? Those are
In the 80s, yeah.
in the 80s, yeah.
Yes,
So this is your first condo high-rise in the city of Tampa. What?
I have also done some low rise. With this project, recently completed a project in Wesley Chapel, but within the city, this is.
Got it. And what made you target this sort of design? Were you inspired by the projects you've done in South Florida? Because to me, it almost looks like a Miami-esque type building.
Okay, the first thing, obviously, when we found this property, we couldn't believe that it was available. I mean, it's kind of crazy to think that you could find 6 acres of land within a private gated community with a marina and a private club undeveloped. I mean, it's like a developer's dream. And we typically like to work with local talent. So we started looking around, and that's how we met Bob. He had done the Barrage. He was in the process of doing Altura. He had done some work within the community there, and that's how we, reached out to him. One of the things that originally this site had was 2 larger buildings instead of 3. I believe that when people are paying this kind of money, they want more privacy. So we wanted to be able to have private elevators coming into your unit. We also wanted to have the through view. These homes, you have the east and west view, so you can see the sunrise and the sunset. And it took a lot. Bob knows we spend an awful lot of time trying to how do we do it? Not it can't be done, but how do we get it done? And he was able to please us in creating the 2 units. We have a height limitation, so it is what it is. And then we went out and hired IDDI, who is an international design firm that does a lot of hospitality work, and created more amenities than I don't know any other property in Tampa that has the amount of amenities that we have in here, down to a golf simulator, a kids room. We have a gym on the 17th floor facing the water. Most developers would take that property and say, "Wow, I could put a unit there and get a few $1 million for it." But we made it part of the community, so no matter where you are in the building, you can go up. Then we have a rooftop pool. So there are a lot of things that were done, and it took us 3 years.
Wow.
From the time we had the property until we went through the process, and we're finally under construction now.
Great idea. That gym is incredible, overlooking Tampa Bay. We were also talking before the show just about the market, and can you give me a general idea about, it's kind of I know it's a hard question to answer maybe, but how you can make a project like this work in a market, right? Where is there a difference between a few years ago and today? As an example, the gym. Maybe today, if you had bought this and you were looking forward 3 years, it would have been more advantageous to do a unit there.
It always is.
Yeah, it always is, no matter the
But
market.
I think we're looking at, really making a community that has value.
Yeah.
No matter who the developer is, their fees of, what the concrete cost and all that stuff is about the same. Mm-hmm. The difference is your land and your amenities and what do you do with it within the community. So we want to do something that people feel proud. Like your grandfather is very happy living in one of Bob's condos. We want, this generation to feel, wow, this is something I'm very proud to call home.
The amenities are so new to condominium developments in terms of the size of them. I feel like the newer condos, maybe in the last decade or 2 decades, the gyms, the saunas, the pet spa, you mentioned golf simulator, like there's such a focus now on the amenities. Whereas in the 70s, like my grandmother lived in, I've had grandparents live in probably all these Bayshore condos, but some of the older ones just don't include really any of that. You might have a pool. Now there's so much focus on amenities.
We have 2 pools. We
Two
have one
pools.
on the ground, for people that want to go up to the roof, and then we have the rooftop.
Is that through market demand, or is that just what buyers are wanting, or what would make a developer make that shift?
It's a combination. You want to have the best mousetrap.
Right.
So some people may like this building because it has the rooftop. Other people say, well, I don't want to go up there. I want to be down,
Yeah.
close to close
I
to
guess
the
it
ground.
depends what floor you live on, right? Maybe shorter elevator ride
You know,
or the view. Yeah, it's really pretty. And also too, competition wise, right? There's not in the city of Tampa. You have the Bayshore corridor that has condominiums. You have a few new ones in downtown Tampa. And then you have these at the Westshore Yacht Club. In South Florida, it's completely different. You have an unbelievable amount of competition as a condominium developer. I mean, you have a Porsche tower that has a car elevator in it. They're having to get so creative with these
and
amenities.
now they're building the Bentley Tower.
And that now they're building the Bentley Tower, which is Coastal Construction, I believe. They were on the podcast a couple weeks ago.
Coastal did the Porsche. The Bentley is not under construction yet.
Got it.
And Coastal just completed the Aston Martin Tower.
Aston Martin Tower, and I hear there's like a Fendi Tower.
Of course.
Louis
Why not?
Vuitton. Right?
Yeah,
Why not?
Why not?
So, but that's the reason is you have so much competition. Yeah, interesting. I figured that was the case. That makes sense. That's logical.
And again, now that you mentioned Coastal, they are the general contractors here, and we have worked with them for many, many years. I would not think of doing a high-rise condo without Coastal by my side.
They seem to be the contractor that can get it done. I mean, their track record is pretty unbelievable when you look at the completed projects.
I mean, they have done the most expensive and nicest condos in Florida.
They're also doing the Ritz-Carlton Tampa. They're building the Pendry. They're doing a lot of the luxury condominiums. Finally coming to our city.
Yes, finally.
You can speak to that, Bob. I mean, I feel like in Tampa, we've been left out of that luxury condo market for a long time.
For a long time. And, when I told you some of my beginning work was in Naples, it was because Naples was a luxury destination. It kept us on the southwest coast of Florida. We ventured a little bit to Eddie's side of the pond there on to the East Coast. But again, the competition there is a lot different. The lifestyle and speed of things is different. So we did a lot of condominiums in that Sarasota to Naples kind of stretch, where there was a lot of beachfront luxury high-rise. Not the kind of high-rise in Miami that's 80 stories, but more like 20 stories or 25 stories. And in that time stretch, very little was going on in Tampa. Matter of fact, right before the big recession, we did the two tallest condo towers in downtown Tampa, towers of Channelside, right? That sort of sparked a little bit of what Vinnick did when he bought and created Water Street. It was before that time, it was in the early 2000s. So that was kind of a breathtaking that we would do two 29-story buildings that were condominiums in downtown Tampa. Nobody was doing that.
For so long, those two towers were so distant from everything else.
I know.
And they were so apparent. Anytime you drive through downtown, you'd go, whoa, they kind of stuck out. But now they just blend into the rest of the
They do blend
neighborhood.
in, yes, right.
With Water Street, and of course, Channelside has had a ton of high-rise construction, including many apartments too.
Right.
I'm sure you're a long-time resident and you don't see it, but when you come from the outside, you see the difference. Tampa has changed. It's not going to be Miami. It's a different vibe, a different lifestyle, but Tampa is a tremendous city. The airport, I mean, I don't know how much you travel, but if you go through Miami Airport versus Tampa Airport, it's like two different worlds. And everything that is here, I think it was planned ahead, and maybe it took a little longer to get there, but you're going to have the benefit of that.
Yeah.
And again, going back to this, I'm still amazed that this property was there.
In Miami, talk about the market demand for a property like that. I mean, the difference not only in price, but just the availability, right? This just wouldn't exist in South Florida on the water.
What is happening today in Miami Beach, people are buying older condos at ridiculous prices and tearing them down to build new.
Wow.
There's no land.
So they've already gone through that cycle, right? Where we still have some of our older product, our 60s, 70s, maybe 80s condos. Those might not get torn down here for another few decades to be replaced. Although there are a lot of changes with after Surfside, all these new regulations and insurance and the way that market has shifted, maybe we'll see some of those towers get rebuilt sooner than we think.
We already are seeing that. I mean, places that are 40 or 50 or 60 years old have to make decisions. Can we really afford to do the 40-year assessment, be able to upgrade structure and be able to spend that kind of money? And a lot of those owners decide they can't. So we've been seeing, developers like Eddie come in and buy pieces of property at exorbitant rates, right?
Well, there's one in Naples.
The
They
one in
paid
Naples,
$1 million a
Coulter
unit
just
for
bought.
land cost.
Yeah. Again, it's a 50, 60-year-old property, not very tall. You certainly won't be a high rise there, but you'll be luxury waterfront because of the price they pay for the land.
It seems like Naples was always a high-end luxury market. There's homes there that are 30, 40, $50 million. Certainly not as many as the other coast of Florida, as South Florida. We've been like air quote on sale to the rest of Florida for a long time. And I think now we're being discovered.
Correct.
Especially a place like Sarasota. Sarasota is such a gem of a market. It's so pretty. It's quintessential Florida. And when you go there, you can get a fantastic house for $3 or $4 million. The same house on the other coast is triple that.
Right.
Do you think there will be, over the next few decades, a price shift here where you start to see?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Not decades. It's coming.
It's coming.
It's here.
It's coming. It's here. It's
You
coming.
you can tell by land cost. I mean, it's as Eddie knows, trying to acquire land, that has value, that has, say, a waterfront view or a downtown close location, right? Those are difficult to find. That's really the developer challenge. Can I find developable land that I can also market?
So this land that you found, the Westshore Yacht Club, you were blown away, first of all, that it was available. You mentioned a height limit. Is that because of the airport, Tampa International, being directly north?
Part of the zoning and all that, and the only reason I mention it is because of, the fact that we went to 3 towers. We wanted to get the view through, but in order to do that, we didn't want to have perpendicular buildings looking at the, just with a side view. So
Right.
by doing the 3 towers, we were able to do a couple things. Number one, there are only 77 residences in the building, so that really gives you a sense of privacy. And they're really not 77 when you look at it from when you live there, because you only have, and you have direct access elevator for every 2 units. So when you go in, it's like 2 units per floor as far as you can see, because the other 2 are disconnected from you.
Yeah. It's such a cool new form of lifestyle. It's with condominiums that are built in the last maybe 10, 15 years, because it can be as private as you want it to be. You can go directly to your unit, or you've got these, like we talked about, these incredible amenities to enjoy with neighbors, et cetera. So the height limit was not necessarily due to the airport. It's due to the specific zoning in that area.
I'm
It's a
sure the
combination.
airport has
It's a
to have
combination,
an approval, but again, we're close to the airport, but not in the path of the place. I don't think that And again, I'm not an expert on airport. But
Well,
in
just-
Miami, just to give you an idea, downtown Miami is very close to the airport, as you know. The height limit there is 1,049 feet. So right now there's a building under construction that is going to be 1,049 feet. And we're at 165 feet here.
What's the name of the new building that's going to be 1,049 feet?
It's Waldorf Astoria.
Can you pull that up, Tyler? Wow. Over 1,000 feet in Florida. It's amazing. So it's a local zoning. It's also an airport consideration. Do you think we'll ever see towers go 600, 700, 800 feet in Tampa?
No.
No, because of that zoning.
Yeah, I think it's because of the zoning, and it's also an FAA consideration, right? Eddie was saying, I don't know that much about airplanes, but, in this location, it is close to the flight path. The landing areas are not too far away. And so they're making final approaches out over the water in that area. So
Got it.
we do have FAA approval at a little bit higher than that, because when you're building the building, you've got cranes and you have other things that will project above the final height. But most of the height restriction here comes from entitlement zoning that was in place at Westshore Yacht Club for, since its inception.
Boy, look at this. So this is the Waldorf Astoria, Miami's first super tall skyscraper. And it's right on that line. It's the exact number you are allowed to build to. So they're maximizing their height limit here. Boy, what an interesting project that is. Looks like it could be in Manhattan or something. It's what Miami's turning into, right? The next
That's what
Manhattan.
it is. I mean,
I think that's another reason why you'll see a lot of our real estate on this side of the coast increase in value maybe quicker than it would have is because of South Florida's growth. A lot of those companies are going
let's
to come
say
this
that
way.
you're moving from New York or some other state, and you're open. I mean, there are a lot of opportunities for business people, internet, everything here in Tampa. I mean, banking, finance, it's here as well as Miami. If you were to buy a comparable property like we're doing in AQUA, it would be 3 times the price.
Wow.
3 times. And I
3
can show
times.
you. We're involved in a project there now that it's again we're selling it. 3 times what we're selling this for.
Wow.
Well, it speaks to the market, right? Tampa, can only
And
absorb
prices
so
will
much.
go up. People don't, if real estate you buy and never sell, almost is the kind of thing with real estate because, eventually, there may be times when it increase faster than others, but at the end of the day, it will continue to increase. Our insurance cost on the first building is $70,000 per unit, just to insure it. So when you look at how much does this cost and how much is there's so much more than just bricks,
Right.
concrete,
And that's why I was asking earlier, does the same deal make sense in today's market, given those
it
costs?
does because it's not like they're charging me more than Bob or you. We're all
Right.
paying the same thing. So if you want something new, you'll pay the price.
Right.
And there's no option. There's a tremendous need for housing in the United States and prime properties like Tampa and locations like this. That's why they get the premium. I don't know the exact number, but there are thousands of people moving to Florida every year,
Yeah.
and they're not all going to Miami. They're coming
thousands
to
a
Tampa.
day, a week, from what we heard.
I think Jeff Brandis we had on yesterday said it was 800 to 1,000 a day.
Yeah.
And they're projecting by the end of the decade another 5 million people moving to Florida. So from every metric, yes, it's true.
And and a lot of them are wealthy people because many of them are coming here because of tax benefits, and some of them are coming because they're at the age that they're looking to retire and be in a better city, better weather, everything else. But so the target for the luxury market, I see it growing tremendously.
Well, there's just not that much product, kind of like what you said. I mean, if you're going to come here and you want something that's brand new, again, you don't have too much to consider, or at least you didn't. You do have a few more projects than you had a few years ago. Is that how you kind of put together how you evaluate the speculative nature of development? Are you looking at migration growth patterns and making a bet in that sense, or are you more focused on specific numbers in terms of insurance cost, in terms of land cost?
Well, we have cost is king.
Right.
As we need to know what it's going to cost before we can put a price on it. But when we look around, and like I have said many times already, we're always looking for land. We cannot find another piece of property to build a high rise on the water in Tampa today. So we have the benefit of having, more towers to come. So anybody buying now, by the time we get to Tower 2 or 3, those prices are necessarily going to be higher. Not because I want to make more profit or anything like that. It's just costs continue to go up. I mean, it's insurance, it is the professionals, plumbers. Well, maybe Coastal got into it when I saw you had a podcast with. Plumbers are making more money than doctors. That's some doctors.
It's something like, yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes you need a plumber more than you need a doctor.
That was me yesterday.
Yeah, there you
On the
go.
outside of my house, I had a spigot pop off. I had water going into my wall. It was a whole ordeal. So trust me, I wanted
these
a plumber more
buildings
than a
need
doctor.
plumbers, electricians,
Right.
and everybody's making more money, which is great
It is great. Yeah, it's great in a lot of ways.
because those people can then go and spend more money.
Right. And Sean DiMartino from Coastal was saying that they've actually seen a lot of subcontractors want to come and move their entire business to Tampa because there's so much happening here. There's so much going on. And our labor force here just because of the way Tampa maybe was a sleepy town for however many decades, they're just not here and available to build all these projects. So he says there's a lot of outside talent moving to the area to take over those jobs.
Those people need housing.
Right.
Yeah, and they look at it regionally too. I mean, when you, like you mentioned Sarasota before, and we've been talking about downtown St. Pete. So the combination, that synergy of those three major metropolitan areas, a contractor who might move his business here, is going to work on all three of those areas, right?
Right.
So
we've got, 4 million people now in the entire Tampa Bay area, including Sarasota?
Incredible.
Amazing.
I mean, I can remember when the state of Florida wasn't more than 4 million people.
It's so crazy.
It's really ages.
Well, Miami-Dade County, the whole county, which includes Miami Beach and, the surrounding areas, is around 3 million. So.
Just in the county. I think Hillsborough County has 1.4 million.
No, what I'm saying, if you already have 4 million here, you're not far behind.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
It's wild to see. It's been wild to grow up here and see all the changes, and it's kind of incredible. We're all still living. I mean, to go from 4 million you were mentioning when you were younger to I think we're at 24.
24? Yeah, incredible.
And then more to come too. Every metric shows this growth will continue for decades to come. But it's also no wonder. We live in a beautiful place. We have no state income tax. Our state is set up in a great way. We have laws that are conducive to opening businesses. It's people want to come here.
Yeah.
How lucky are we to be here already, right?
That we're very lucky.
So what are you seeing in we've talked about kind of the future market. Let's talk specifics about kind of this market versus other markets in Florida. I don't think we've mentioned Jacksonville or Orlando. Have you done projects up there?
Yes, we currently have a substantial site in Jacksonville that we're developing, but that's more on the townhouse and multifamily.
Got it.
It's about 70 acres of land that we're in the process of doing the land.
And Tyler can pull up that picture. And then Bob, have you done projects up there?
We've done projects all over the state, and most recently Jacksonville has kind of hit the market as one of those multifamily, more rental, more townhome, not a lot of condominiums, but some. And we've done a lot of projects on the beach in the past there, or like in Ponte Vedra and places like that. But yeah, it's a burgeoning market. It's hot on the radar.
Yeah,
for a lot of multifamily developers.
And I heard in their downtown they have a sort of Water Street type mixed use development happening, smaller scale, I believe,
on
but
the river.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Florida's it. I just think people come to the state and, maybe Miami's too expensive or too loud or too crazy, and they go,
It's not for everybody.
Right. It's not for everyone. But that's what I believe is cool about our state is all these different cities, they do have a different character and a different vibe. And Miami is so different from Tampa, which is so different from Orlando, et cetera.
Precisely.
This property is in Daytona Beach. We just got it approved for a condo hotel.
Interesting design there with all the wraparound glass. Very cool.
Sometimes the site makes you do things, like Bob was saying about one of the
Usually
builders
it makes you
because
do things. That and developers. Yeah. Right.
It's kind of interesting.
We always try to maximize the view to the
Yeah.
water. I mean, water
Right.
is what,
That's what people moving here want. I think when people moving here think of a Florida lifestyle, water is included in that equation somewhere.
Yep.
So the pass-through window, that idea is really interesting. You get the sunrise, sunset. I was at a condo called La Ambiance in Sarasota, and they had that same type of setup. That'll be really interesting. So you're doing what? Floor to ceiling windows on both sides of the unit?
right.
Pretty much.
And balconies on both sides.
And balconies on both sides.
Yeah. And it's really about the design of the floor plan so that you can see the flow through, right?
Yeah.
They are much more open these days and less rooms. So we try to, focus on that.
I owned a condo in Sarasota that was built in the 70s, and the ceilings were low. It had those little aluminum windows. And you're thinking, this could have been so much better had they just opened up the window. I think...
Look, the car you drove in the 70s is not the car you drive today.
Yeah, right. Yeah, half of them didn't have AC and all that. How has that changed over the decades, just in terms of maybe from an architecture perspective, but also a developer perspective? We kind of spoke about your perspective, Eddie, where that's what the market is demanding. That's what people want today. But from a floor plan and from an architecture perspective, how has that shifted since like the 70s and 80s condominiums to today? They're so different.
Yeah. Well, just like you mentioned, everything of the 70s, 80s was so low, right? You were trying to maximize every cent you had, and we still have to do that, right? As Eddie mentioned, cost is always a major factor. So you're trying to optimize everything. Most of the buildings that are tall have gotten taller, and mainly because the living space is taller. It's not 8 feet anymore; it's 10 feet. Penthouses, they're 12 feet. But you still have to air condition it and get the plumbing and the sprinklers and all that stuff in there. So you try to maximize where those views are, right? So you open up common areas that are great rooms and kitchens, and so you fill them full of light. And you do that with floor to ceiling glass as much as you can afford. It's you look at a building like this that is going to demand high dollars, right? This is a very expensive sales price at this building, so you can afford to make it all glass. At the Westshore Yacht Club, I mean, we have to think about cost, right? But we have a tremendous amount of glass, and so it's very optimal where you put that glass. So it's very easy to kind of wrap glass around the building and go, well, every room has a view.
What's the relationship between the developer and the architect with that particular conversation?
It's very hands-on. I mean, Eddie and Jorge, is why Eddie says we've taken 3 years to get to this point, because we care about each step, right? And it starts off as kind of a broad brush, and it just gets more refined as we go. And they're very hands-on in that process. And they have made actually very good architectural suggestions. It amazes me every time. But we work it together.
Well, what happens? We try to learn. I mean, if you think you know it all, you're in
wrong.
trouble.
Yeah.
So, we visit other projects. We see other things.
Interesting.
Miami, not taking anything away from Bob, but what people are doing, just like they bring in the brands, they bring in the world famous architects, and they bring, and everybody's trying to outdo the other one. So, again, we're all trying to do the best for the project. We want to sell it. And we want the people who move there to be happy. So at the end of the day, it's, how can I do it so that it's a little bit better? Do we, add more glass? Do we make the balcony deeper? All those little details, it takes time. It takes time.
So that's always the forefront of the conversation is we need to sell it and people need to love it, kind of period. And then everything that's designed is based on those facts.
And you have to be a lover of jigsaw puzzles, right? I mean, all of this is fitting all the pieces, right? How does it fit on the land?
And then you have restrictions,
budget, height restrictions,
setbacks, and everything else.
And fitting it within that box.
Yeah. And really, from a design perspective, the constraints become the opportunities, right? You have things that limit you,
at that view,
and those become your motivations, has become the cause and effect. It's like when I mentioned the design of Barrage around the old grandfather oak tree that was part of the Colonnade restaurant. All of those things are opportunities that shape the buildings.
I do want to get some details on the Virage in a second, because that's really a unique tower. One of the first newer ones on Bayshore in a few years. But real quick on AQUA,
This is a good example.
Sure.
Years ago, you probably had a picket railing out there,
right,
which would block. Now it's all glass.
Now that's where some material technology plays a role too, right? Because this didn't really exist, or maybe it did, but it was harder to manufacture 40 years ago.
Yeah, and
the
cost and hurricane codes. Now this, even though it's on a railing and not on a window, it still has to be impact resistant. So you have laminated glass out on the railing.
So does all glass on these high rise have to be impact rated?
Well, it does mainly in the railing for the strength of the railing.
But in our case, it is.
Yes.
Yep. Got it.
Yep.
And of course, the advantages to doing it this way are incredible. I mean, you open up your view, you have this beautiful almost window effect where you feel like you're protected, but also at the same time, you're not jeopardizing any sort of a view on the water. It's really pretty. Look at that view. And it's crazy. You can see probably downtown St. Petersburg and downtown Tampa.
It's
from
in
your
the
front.
rendering if you look.
Right there, yeah. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, I mean, imagine from your, what would it be, your east balcony.
Right.
Yeah, you're looking to downtown Tampa on the sunrise and downtown St. Pete at the sunset. It's kind of an interesting deal there.
And the marina, having the marina there is such an advantage. And one thing that a lot of people don't realize, because it's a gated community, you can walk. You can, a lot of people have golf carts just to go to the club. But the other thing that we have is that the club will deliver your dinner to your apartment if you want to.
Oh, wow.
Just think of that. You don't feel like really going out. You're there with some friends, or you're watching a football game or whatever, and you call the restaurant. I mean, I know today Uber is out there, but this is more personalized.
Well, it's like room service, really. It's
it
like
is.
you're living in a hotel.
It's room service.
That's awesome.
It really separates Westshore Yacht Club, I think, from a lot of the other single, like Viraj we're talking about, that are kind of freestanding buildings in a community. I mean, their Westshore Yacht Club is South Tampa, right?
Right.
But at Westshore Yacht Club, you really have a lot of amenities already built into the community.
Could you pull up maybe a map of Westshore Yacht Club? I'm actually not too familiar with the grounds itself. I mean, obviously I know where the location and all that. Okay, here we go. So it's marked with this orange line here. The project we're speaking of is the yellow. So you're actually building more docks on the outside of
We're
the
not.
condo.
The marina owner is.
So there is an expansion plan.
Yes. It'll be at 68 additional slips.
And those additional slips can be purchased by the residents of the
No,
condo?
they're for rent.
They're for rent.
So you can have your boat there. Mm-hmm.
And really down at the bottom of this image, you'll see where it says 4, that's the marina. 3 is where the yacht club itself is. So there's a club building there that has full dining.
It has 2 swimming pools, tiki bar, restaurant, meeting rooms, spa.
It's actually a larger community than really, I mean, driving by, you wouldn't know it was this large.
Well, and a lot of it is still in the making. Like you mentioned Marina Pointe earlier, that's, certainly this is a built-out image of all of it, I think, when it would be done.
Right.
And the old Rattlesnake Point, which is the whole item in the middle there, that's becoming more populated with multifamily apartments and restaurants and that kind of thing.
This really is a whole new district for Tampa. It's an
Very
entirely
much.
new waterfront district. This is where Salt Shack is,
Yep.
right? Number 6.
Mm-hmm.
You've got Hula Bay, which is awesome. They also have, I believe, that's where you can get like gas for your boat, and they have,
Yeah.
bait, ice, all that sort of stuff, which I'm sure the yacht club would also provide as well.
Yep.
So if you're a boater, this is a fantastic
Place to be.
the place.
And
to
you're, like you said, if you're going out from Davis Island, one of those places, it takes you a long time before you're out there on the water.
Oh yeah, that's a long haul.
And it really kind of speaks to Tampa's transitioning of its property, right? When this point used to be very much about shipbuilding, right? It was all kind of a industrial marine thing,
yeah.
kind of like the Channelside district in Tampa is becoming, where Darrell Shaw's looking to, invigorate that whole Ybor Channel part that is up by the Selman and downtown in the Ybor.
It's amazing that waterfront was ever not at the forefront of Florida's real estate development. But I guess maybe
It's history. Everything was water transport. Everything was by barge. Everything was an industrial look or industrial feel. That's what we design cities to do.
right.
And that whole thing has evolved, right? And
Right.
some cities are a little bit later to it than others, Tampa being one of them.
Yeah, Harbor Island was like a shipping yard
Yeah.
with a train. I mean, do you remember that?
Oh,
when you were
sure. I
younger?
definitely remember it. And it was quite a feat to do that in the 80s and build a little tram out to the island and populate it with a little community. So
My dad said he would take his John boat when he was a little kid and go to Harbor Island
Sure.
and hunt rabbits. I was
yeah,
like, what?
I know. Crazy.
Kind of wild how things shift over time. It's
Well, and you go back far enough, and you see like where our office is in Ybor City, and where Teddy Roosevelt and the Rough Riders, right? Well, at Fort Brooke, where the Fort Brooke garage is, that used to be Fort Brooke, and they would come on our property because there was a government spring there. That's where they got their water. But of course, they took wagons through Palmettos, so things obviously evolve, right? And we're just in one of those new transitions to where, AQUA is a transition into completing the Westshore district.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. At the Tampa Bay Hotel, I read something that was talking about Ybor City and downtown Tampa and how in the late 1800s, those two places were completely separated. I mean, in between was a mile of palmetto forest. and
Right.
it was a journey between the two. And now it's
Even culturally, too.
Even culturally, absolutely.
yeah.
And now it's all a part of the same urban core.
Yeah.
And I used to go when I was a little kid to Picnic Island Park, which is just south of this entire kind of redevelopment of this yacht club district here. And Yeah, it was all industrial. It was oil and gas down south.
Yeah.
Port Tampa had some stuff going on. And then even as recently as a few years ago, this kind of peninsula where Salt Shack is, this was, I think, a chemical company. There was it was just large scale industry. And now to see so much more residential being brought into the area, the town center, right, with the grocery store and the awesome coffee shop. I forgot the name of it, but it's really cool to see an area that had no human livability really at all. It was just for industry.
Yeah.
And now people are like walking their dogs and their babies in strollers, and it's becoming a livable working neighborhood. And this development at AQUA is a big part of that too, because it's really what was the condo south of AQUA? There's an older building that sits there.
Well, we actually designed that building. I did.
Oh, really?
Castillo, right? It was the first and only high rise in the Westshore Yacht Club.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, just to kind of keep going back in history, when in some of our early work in Naples, we became an architect for WCI Communities, who developed Westshore Yacht Club, and I actually helped master plan the community, and carve out these high-rise pieces, not knowing that I would do one in 2004 and then come along and the last few years, and it has been a journey, but an interesting evolution journey. When you talk about a neighborhood and how WCI had the vision to go into Westshore and create a gated community, and it was very very themed. It was, they had done their research on South Tampa housing, and so a lot of it is kind of Spanish mission tile and stucco kind of look. And, naturally, the Castillo high-rise had to play right into that. And it's hard to do a 165-foot tall building that looks like a Spanish mission, kind of a place. But what's great about AQUA is it's sort of the evolutionary end to Westshore Yacht Club. So the fact that it takes on more of a yacht modern aesthetic, I think is very healthy, very different. It places it in time better than if we were to just continue with another red roofed building. So
you've got the barrel tile roof. That's you're halfway there on your Spanish Mediterranean look.
Yeah.
That's the thing too, is that style. Well, the style is actually coming back in a lot of ways. There's this contemporary Mediterranean architecture that I'm seeing a lot more of, especially in single family homes.
Sure. It's a blend.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
And this is a blend too. It's just at the pedestrian scale, there's the scale of the building is very much community, kind of neighborhood oriented. The perimeter of the project has single family villas that are part of the step down in scale from the tower. We haven't talked about that yet, but
Do we have floor plans and some more details about AQUA? I'm sure we do. Let's pull those up, because floor plans have shifted so much over the years. I mean, the great room thing was big when I started 10 years ago, my real estate career. And it's almost shifting back to that more traditional style where...
Well, I think people still want open living, right? Because it connects rooms.
Maybe an in-between of the two.
Yeah, and in between of the two. There's certainly transitional things.
What's happening, you're creating additional rooms, whether you call it a den, an office or something, for people who want that private space where they can work from, or, so all of our residents have a separate den. We're calling it a den. It can be whatever.
An extra room, office, yeah.
Sure.
Right.
Well, you try to be versatile, not knowing what your end buyer is going to need. So, here you have ample bedrooms and baths. Usually all the bedrooms have ensuite bathrooms, right? So lots of guest capabilities. And then the larger units, of course, have dens that can be convertible to offices. But really, the living open space, I think, is still part of what happens today. People love to entertain in their kitchen. The kitchen is not someplace you go and cook the turkey and come out to the dining room in. It's all part of the same space. People are, watching events and Netflix and cooking and dining and visiting and entertaining.
Great room living.
Yep.
This is interesting too. Now, these details here, the wood inlays, are those going to be standard in the units? I'm sure that's an option.
Right, those are decorator items.
Got it.
Yeah.
This is to give a buyer an idea of what they can do.
Right.
And some, like it, or, maybe.
It's interesting kind of what you were saying, Bob, about guessing is probably a bad word, but you're trying to play on, I guess, the masses when you're selling. What's the
Sure.
total? How many units in each building?
77.
77. So you've got maybe 170 or so total units.
250,
250 or so,
three
right?
buildings,
Times
yeah.
3. So how are you doing, do you pick color schemes and stuff like that, or are you providing the buyer with essentially like a shell and then they have a design option?
We're actually given finished units at this point. We including the flooring and so forth. A lot of times when developers sell decorate already, and there are pros and cons with everything. But what happens, especially with flooring, you move in and your neighbor doesn't move in for 3 or 4 months later, and now you hear the noise and everything else. So we're trying to make it as livable as possible. Obviously, they're going to come in and personalize it, but all the flooring and everything is already included.
Got it. So you are providing like a move-in ready product. It's just that usually people will come in and say, I want the wood floor or whatever that may be.
Yeah. Well, they're usually making those decisions with a buyer program as the project is under construction, right? So that's always a challenge for the builder and for the developer, right? I'm selling units, so that person's going to pick out their available finishes.
Yeah.
And then hopefully the unit gets finished during construction. Some things get done after construction. And we, as a developer and an architect, you try to avoid that as much as possible, just to have the building finished when you're finished.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
Well, time is on your side, right? You said I think you're on the foundation phase currently.
Right. Yeah.
So of course, as you get a buyer list going, you have time.
As you get closer to
yeah,
the finish,
absolutely.
Right. Very interesting. Let's talk about the Virage. It's an incredible building. I love the way it's positioned right at I think Virage means bend, doesn't it?
It does. So and it bends right around a grandfather oak tree.
That's right.
Yeah, and it's a different kind of site where you mentioned it earlier, where it doesn't, it isn't parallel to Bayshore. It's more perpendicular to Bayshore.
Yeah.
But it commands in that way tremendous views. I don't know if you can bring up Virage. We didn't bring any images of it, but
Tyler's working on it.
yeah, Tyler's on. He's on it.
He's on it.
Mr.
Yeah,
Internet Man.
it's a cool building, and when you walk in my grandparents' unit, to have the skyline directly in front of you instead of you're looking straight at the water. Granted, there's nothing wrong with the water view, but it's just interesting the way this building is set up. Yeah, you can see in that picture how it's angled towards downtown, which is an interesting deal.
And
there.
if you pop one of those open where you can see the large oak tree that you see sort of in this image, very much started to set up the curvilinear shapes, and the zoning kind of
That's a good picture, Tyler.
led to a lot of the stepping of the top floors. So there's penthouse units in there as well.
Now, the Colonnade was a legendary Tampa restaurant.
Yes.
I was sad to see it go.
We all were.
I wish they'd bring it back in some capacity. But the oak tree was always iconic. I'm really
Yes.
glad it was kept.
Yep.
Sounds like that was intentional.
It was. I mean, we're both from Tampa. I mean, I still have photographs of my sister when she went to Hillsborough High School and went to it as a drive-in, right?
Wow.
Before it was a restaurant. I mean, it was a restaurant, but you drove your car up to it, right? So it's had a lot of history. And the family that owned the Colonnades simply had, lived its life. They got to the point where it was time to transition that site, right? And so a lot of people had looked at it, a lot of developers like Eddie, WCI had looked at it, a lot of different people. And it was difficult to make it happen. Again, these things are like little tapestries. They're hard to get entitled, zoned, built, sold. All of those things are factors. And the Virage was a kind of a classic case of all of those things coming together. A South Tampa community where there's so many single-family residences around, it's difficult to shoehorn in a 250-foot tall building. People, a lot of people don't want to see that in their backyard. We're all familiar with that expression. So, but when you look at the site and you look at, iconic Bayshore, it needed an iconic address, and it turned out very nice.
Absolutely. And what was I going to ask? Eddie, I was going to ask you about oh, shoot.
You were going to ask about AQUA.
AQUA. Well,
Eddie loves Virage too, but he wants to talk about AQUA.
Well, of course, but this is, from an architecture perspective, it's interesting to talk about.
Sure.
Plus, Virage is already sold out.
Yeah, true.
No opportunities there. If you're looking for new, go to AQUA.
Right. No
Another
competition.
thing that we did in AQUA is we were going to do some townhouses, and in the process realized that there's a market out there for people who are moving away from their single-family home because they're empty nesters or whatever, but they know their kids are coming back. They make it go away for a while, but they're
coming back.
Huh?
Yeah, the kids are coming back.
So they want the space and the privacy of a home. So what we did is we eliminated the townhomes and now are building single-family homes at the bottom of which is, I think, unique in that.
Do we have a rendering of what that's going to look like? That's interesting. So you're doing single family.
Yeah, they're villas. They're like a blend. They are like a single family, but they're 2-story, right?
Not attached to each other.
Not
correct?
attached to each
not
other.
attached, and they have
True single family.
True single family.
and they have an elevator, even though they're only 2 stories. And what's unique about this villa is that they will be able to use all the amenities of the building. So if they want to go to the rooftop pool,
So it's just a lifestyle choice the buyer would have to make.
Yeah.
The condo is very popular. I mean, you turn the key, that's it. You can take off on a trip for a couple months. You're not worried about your yard.
And this is
all
similar.
that sort of stuff.
And this is similar because it's all maintained, but like the condo.
So it truly is an in between a single family living and then like a townhouse style.
Sure, and you have a 2-car garage and a little guest space, so it's nice. It's a nice
And you've
little
got
offbeat.
your yard maintenance taken care of,
Right.
all that sort of stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Gated.
Everything's.
Yeah, I'd like to see that. I didn't know that there was villas included.
I knew I was going to make a sale today. I had that feeling.
Now that you mentioned villa,
Yeah. Well, and architecturally, it serves as a nice transition of the tower, right? Because along its eastern and western edges, it has a 2-story residential element, so it's a nice transition to the tower.
interesting.
Right.
So they're not attached to the tower, but
they're not.
They're close enough to where
Yeah.
that cosmetically it kind of
Yeah, it
blends.
definitely feels like it's part of the the tower, but they're not connected.
Well, I can't wait to see a picture of this. How are we
Yeah.
doing?
And
Here we are.
And the Ritz has
Cool.
the same type of thing. The Ritz
Right.
on Bayshore has
Right, but the
villas.
villas are townhouses that back up to the garage.
Yeah, it's a
So
different
they're
situation.
connected to the
There you
garage.
go.
This is a true
Beautiful.
individual lot.
So you will have a sort of courtyard, yard space. You will have
Yes.
an outdoor private area for yourself. Really pretty. That's the condo.
Yep.
Yeah, go back to all of the gallery shot where it shows all the pictures. Let's see what we have. So, villa residence. It's probably just those 4 photos.
You want to look some at the amenities? See some of those? That might something you haven't really put up yet.
I do, but I also want to see the villas if there is a rendering of it kind of with the tower. Maybe we don't have something like that.
It's
just
in
to
the
imagine.
works.
We're
We're
now-
still coming out of the ground and still
Come
getting-
back and see me. We'll
come back
do it
and
on the
see
next
it.
show.
Yeah. Here's a little site plan of it. But
Got it. Very nice. Oh, actually, pretty darn good sized yard for this type of setup.
yeah, it's a 10-foot side yard, probably bigger than you have in most single-family communities, where 7 feet is kind of the average.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Plus, it's very long, almost 60 feet. Very cool. Yeah, let's talk amenities. Want to talk about the actual the clubhouse. You mentioned there's a restaurant. Of course, you have the marina itself as well. So where can we find that? Amenities, AQUA.
There you go. It's all about lifestyle, right?
All about lifestyle. I saw a spa. Is there going to be a sort of spa?
Yes, we
There
have a
is.
spa, steam room, sauna.
A theater,
Massage
golf
rooms.
simulator, dining spaces.
Maybe we should talk about what you don't have incled.
Pretty
It
much.
sounds like-
We are pretty much got
Chef.
everything. I mean, even
You
folks,
have to bring your own chef.
yeah, but they're focusing on the kids, on the teens,
Yeah.
and which is really nice. So everybody kind of has their own spaces.
Like we said before, it's really what the market is demanding. People want a more a community environment. They don't want to get in their car and drive everywhere. Sports lounge, wow. Oh my gosh. Look at the size of that screen.
We also have some guest suites. So if you live there and you have relatives or family members coming, they can stay in the building, but not necessarily in your apartment. So that we have separate apartments available for them to stay in. We also have some office space as part of the amenities that you can use, a conference room and work areas. And
that's awesome. Food looks good. Now, is this portion that we're talking about right now open currently? If a buyer wanted to come check out, try the restaurant, all that sort of stuff?
We have a sales office at the site. We were fortunate to buy an additional lot facing Westshore Drive so that the people visiting the sales office did not have to go through the gate and get in. So
Tremendous
we have direct
sales
access to Bayshore. As far as the club, it's a private club. I mean, if you come through us, we can get you in there. But I mean, people coming off the street will not be able to go to the club unless they're members or they're a guest of the member.
Right. Let's talk about the spa for a second too. So AQUA Spa, how is that going to be set up? I mean, could a resident just go book a massage, etc.?
That's the idea.
Fantastic.
That's the idea. And if you just want to use the steam room or whatever it
There
is.
you go.
Beautiful. Amazing.
Sauna, steam room.
Well, I love it. I got to come check it out. I truthfully didn't know how expansive this development was.
Kids room.
I had imagined it was either only condos or some homes back there. And again, driving by, you can't really tell that it's this expansive. There's a lot to enjoy back behind these gates.
That's what it is. It's gates and walls. So once you get in, and it's actually very well maintained. I mean, the landscaping and everything, you really feel good the minute you drive in there.
And it was initially developed, you mentioned, in the early 2000s. It's kind of gone through this.
And WCI was an excellent developer.
Right.
They really planned things very well.
I mean, if you drive by today, it looks newer, frankly, the way they've maintained it and the landscaping,
well
like you mentioned. Pretty. Well, congratulations on everything so far. You guys have had amazing careers, and thanks for bringing your talents to Tampa.
And thank you for having us, and we're available. We'd love to have lunch at the club whenever you're ready.
Let's do it. Let's check it out.
Sell you one of those penthouse units.
Yeah. Well, like we said, we're going to combine the two, right?
That's right. You're going to combine them.
Beautiful.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Bob Hall, Eddie Avila, thank you both for being here. Bye, everyone. See you next week.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you guys for watching this episode. If you enjoyed it, make sure to like it. Check us out on YouTube, subscribe to our channel, give us a comment, give us some feedback. We want to know how we're doing. Thanks for watching. Bye, everybody.